Chapter 1918 Ranmil is astonished. Chapter 1918 Ranmil is astonished. This is your only chance to get out of here alive. Why would you turn it down? No, you. Feng Wu smiled. Thank you, Princess, for your kindness, but the Ghost King doesn't get to decide which path is the right one. Ranmil feigned a confused look. What do you mean? Feng Wu smiled confidently. I'll decide which path is the right one. With her hair and the lower hem of her clothes dancing in the wind, Feng Wu looked as splendid as a goddess. That was how confident she was. All eyes were on her now. Feng Wu, you've chosen death yourself. Good, thought Ranmil. She rejoiced inwardly, but she still feigned a sorry tone. Princess Feng Wu, if that's your choice, I'll have to respect it. Feng Lu and Feng Yiran found Feng Wu's choice idiotic. What kind of person would choose death over life? Her pride will get her killed. All the better. We'll have a chance now, Feng Lu told Duguyama with a smile. Feng Wu heard those words, but she ignored them. Ranmil was secretly over the moon and found the black-robed Ghost King her lucky star. She thought that she could use the chance to drive a wedge between Feng Wu and Feng Sun. Ranmil smiled sincerely at Feng Sun. Young Lord Feng, would you like to join the team? She was convinced that Feng Sun would join her, because any normal person would. Moreover, she had been fawning on the young lord on their way here and had become friends with him, which was why she was so confident. However, Feng Sun's reply felt like a slap to her face. Why should I join your team? Feng Sun snorted. I'll go where Xiao Wu goes. Ranmil was baffled. She had expected that Feng Wu would refuse, but Feng Sun, why would he turn her down? The smile froze on Ranmil's face. Feng Sun couldn't care less about how she felt. He stood by Feng Wu's side and said, We're the survival team. Join us if you want. You have to believe that we'll lead you out of this hall and become the winner in the end. The crowd was speechless. The corner of Ranmil's mouth twitched. She didn't know that Feng Sun would be so loyal to Feng Wu, and she realized that all her efforts had gone to waste. She clenched her fists in her sleeves. If you want to die with Feng Wu, go ahead. You're not Jun Linyuan's only friend, thought Ranmil. Young Lord Xian, Ranmil smiled at Xian Yi. However, before she could say anything, Xian Yi moved behind Feng Sun with his arms crossed, and became a member of the survival team. The smile froze on Ranmil's face again. After Feng Sun, Xian Yi had humiliated her as well. Ranmil was so mad that she thought she was going to lose her mind. Why were Jun Linyuan's friends so annoying? However, you're not the only help I can find, thought Ranmil. Your Royal Highness, Ranmil then turned to the seventh prince. Chapter 1919 Final Choice. Chapter 1919 Final Choice. The seventh prince had yet to recover from his astonishment. Ever since he learned of the relationship between Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan, the seventh prince had been in a trance-like state. However, Ranmil's voice woke him up immediately. Huh? What was that? The seventh prince looked at Ranmil in bewilderment. Ranmil didn't know what to say. Jun Linyuan was also a prince of the Junwu Empire, and liked to follow Jun Linyuan around. Naturally, Ranmil would want to please him. Ranmil asked with a smile, Your Royal Highness, would you like to join my team? The seventh prince looked at Ranmil in bewilderment. Instead of answering her question, he asked, What about Feng Wu? Is my goddess in your team? Ranmil's face froze again. To save a precious place, Feng Lu said loudly, No, Feng Wu gave up the opportunity. She's in the survival team. The seventh prince ignored the name of the team and said solemnly, I'll be wherever my goddess is. Where's that team? Looking up, he saw Feng Wu and the others, and he quickly ran up to them and stood at the end of the line. Ranmil's face went livid. After the humiliation she received from Feng Sun, Xian Yi and the seventh prince had done the same. Even Ranmil couldn't remain unaffected. The second prince stared at the seventh prince and was equally displeased. The two of them had the same mother, but his younger brother only wanted to hang out with Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu. "Linyun, come over here," the second prince bellowed. Jun Linyun shook his head. "No. This is where I want to be." The second prince gritted his teeth. "Are you an idiot? That path will only get you killed. Join my side and you'll live." The seventh prince was perplexed. "Huh? What?" Ranmil wanted to win the second prince to her side, so she said patiently, "The Black-Robe Ghost King said earlier that the chosen team will undergo trials at the difficult level, while the survival team will go through hell mode. Your Royal Highness, you're too important to take such risk. Please come with us." "I see." Jun Linyun let out a breath of relief. Ranmil nodded and smiled. It seemed that the seventh prince would be on her side after all. But Ranmil was still smiling when Jun Linyun rested his hands on his waist and raised his chin proudly. "You have no idea how awesome my goddess is. With her on my team, no trial will ever be a problem for us." "What?" Ranmil was so embarrassed, she felt like she had been slapped again. She turned to look at the second prince. The second prince was equally frustrated and wanted to give the seventh prince a good spanking. However, Jun Linyun had been an unruly child since he was little, and there was nothing the second prince could do. If he could help it, he wouldn't have allowed his young brother to run after Jun Linyuan all the time. Ranmil was even more furious when she saw that the second prince couldn't do anything about the seventh prince. "So, Feng Wu, this is why you're so arrogant. So many people are on your side," thought Ranmil, her chest heaving with rage. Chapter 1920, I Love Him More Than My Own Life. Chapter 1920, I Love Him More Than My Own Life. Right now, the members of the chosen team included Ranmil, Sapphiro, Master Ju, and the second prince. Feng Wu's survival team included herself, Feng Sun, Xian Yi, and the seventh prince. In terms of absolute capability, Feng Wu's team wasn't necessarily inferior. "There are 3 places left." Ranmil looked around and narrowed her eyes. The remaining candidates were Feng Lu, Feng Yiran, Feng Sang, Dugu Yamo, Dugu Mengshi, and the unconscious Jun Wuxia. She didn't like any of them, but to annoy Feng Wu. Ranmil chuckled. "Of the 6 of you, Princess Jun Wuxia is still unconscious, so she should stay with her brother. As for the last 2 places," she smiled. "Feng Lu, you and your siblings are Princess Feng Wu's family, so I'm sure that you'll want to stay with her. In that case, Dugu Mengshi and Dugu Yamo, you're with me." Hearing that, Feng Lu panicked. No, they didn't want to stay with Feng Wu at all. Was Ranmil blind? Hadn't she realized how much they disliked Feng Wu? "Princess, Feng Lu was about to say something, but Dugu Mengshi and Dugu Yamo had walked up to Ranmil and were expressing their gratitude. "Thank you, Princess, for choosing us. We'll do whatever we can to help you get up those stairs. My family is grateful for this as well." "Princess, Princess!" Feng Lu rushed over to Ranmil's side and grabbed her hand. She looked as if she was going to lose her mind as she yelled, "Princess, we want to stay with you as well. We're not close to Feng Wu at all. Please choose me. Please." Ranmil frowned and said, "But I don't have any places left. I can't. Mengshi, help me. Please help me." Feng Lu grabbed Dugu Mengshi's hands and wrapped herself around him. Dugu Mengshi felt conflicted. Feng Lu was the woman he loved, so how could he bring himself to? "Sister." As usual, Dugu Mengshi turned to his sister for help. Dugu Yamo was infuriated. "Dugu Mengshi, you're not giving away your place." She glared at Dugu Mengshi. Dugu Mengshi was speechless. He didn't want to give up his own place. He just thought that what if his sister? Dugu Yamo had no idea what Dugu Mengshi was thinking at the moment. If she did, she would probably pass out. Duguyamo asked Feng Lu. Feng Lu, don't you love Mingxi? Yes. Yes, I do. I love him more than my own life. Feng Lu said eagerly. Duguyamo said, if that's the case, why are you troubling him? If he swaps places with you, he'll die. Since you love him so much, why don't you let him go? I'm begging you. Feng Lu was dumbfounded. Let Dugu Mingxi go? Then what about her? All of a sudden, whoosh! Feng Lu took out a dagger from her sleeve and cut her own wrist open. Arg! Lu! Dugu Mingxi pulled Feng Lu into his arms and was almost in tears. Lu, why are you doing this? Lu! Chapter 1921 Quarrel. Chapter 1921 Quarrel. Mingxi, Feng Lu held Dugu Mingxi's handsome face in her hands and burst into tears. Mingxi, I don't want to be parted from you. The survival team has the young lords and the seventh prince, and we may not lose. I can stay with this team, but if we're in two different teams, one of us is going to win, and the other is bound to lose. I don't care if I die. I just want to be with you, Mingxi. Blood ran down Feng Lu's wrist as she cried. Hearing this, Feng Wu smiled a little. Feng Lu was so full of lies that Dugu Mingxi was probably the only one who still believed her. As expected, Dugu Mingxi turned around and looked at Duguyamo with teary eyes. Sister, sister, please let us stay together. Please give your place to Lu. Duguyamo was astonished. Dugu Mingxi held Feng Lu in his arms and knelt down, crying so hard that he trembled. Sister, please. Please give your place to Lu. I'm begging you. Duguyamo was speechless. That was probably the most hurtful thing she had ever heard. Even Feng Wu felt sorry for Duguyamo. All she wanted was to protect her brother, but her brother was basically asking her to die for his woman. Dugu Mingxi, you. Duguyamo stared at Dugu Mingxi, so angry that she didn't know what to say. When the others weren't looking, Ranmil's eyes glinted coldly. She loved to see how people showed their true selves in a moment like this. How wonderful! But she was forced to play this innocent girl in front of other people, which was very tiresome. Crack! Just then, the ground started to crack open. Master Ju frowned and reminded them in a cold voice, "We don't have much time left." Ranmil nodded and told Feng Lu, "If you don't want to be on Feng Wu's team, of course we can take you, but the places are limited. How about this? You and Duguyamo will draw lots, and the winner will be with us." Before they could say anything, Ranmil glanced at Sapphiro. She wouldn't do such petty things, because that would only be belittling herself. Sapphiro took the hint, turned around, and soon produced two bamboo sticks of different length. She told Duguyamo and Feng Lu, "Pick one, then. The one with the longer stick can be on our team." The lucky draw would probably decide who lived and who died. Duguyamo hesitated. Feng Lu and Dugu Mingxi looked at each other and immediately walked up to Sapphiro. "Sister, I'll do it for you." Dugu Mingxi reached out. "No, let me." But Dugu Mingxi had picked the stick before Duguyamo could finish her sentence. "Now, let's see what you got." Sapphiro was very curious. "Sister, here's your stick." Dugu Mingxi showed it to Duguyamo. With one look, they could tell who had picked the longer stick. It was Feng Lu. Chapter 1922, You Tampered with It. Chapter 1922, You Tampered with It. Duguyamo's scream filled the hall. She stared at the short stick in her hand and looked like she had been struck by lightning. This meant that she had to join the survival team. Ha 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 ha! Feng Lu almost jumped to her feet. She had picked the longer stick. "I'm going to live." "Ah, Mingxi, I won. We can be together. Even if we die, we'll die together." "Yes." Dugu Mingxi held Feng Lu in excitement. Duguyamo had yet to recover from her astonishment. She stared at the short stick in her hand and saw that it seemed to have been snapped. She then recalled how Dugu Mingxi had rushed out to do it for her, and what he said earlier. She immediately realized what had happened and glared at Dugumingshi. It was you. You snapped my stick, didn't you? You tampered with it. Dugumingshi looked dumbfounded. Sister, I didn't. Duguyamo tried to smack Dugumingshi. You bastard. I'm gonna kill you. You're going to kill your own sister for an outsider. I've been so good to you since we were little, and this is how you repay me. You dirty swine. Dugumingshi said matter-of-factly, Sister, how can you say that? I did no such thing. But Duguyamo was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and she wouldn't listen to him. She lashed out at him, looking as if she wanted to eat him alive. They had been loving siblings only a moment ago, but now they had become enemies. Sapphiro and Ranmil exchanged satisfied looks. It was so nice to see people torn apart. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes when she saw this. The White Fairy was right. Ranmil was an evil person and a tough enemy. That's enough. You're giving me a headache. Sapphiro threw a dirty look at them. That's set, so stop arguing. They cheated. This is cheating. Duguyama wouldn't have it and went on screaming. Sapphiro snapped. Did you see it with your own eyes? Do you have any proof? Duguyamo said, I. Sapphiro said, if not, you're slandering them. Miss Duguyu. Sapphiro glanced at Feng Wu's team and suddenly chuckled. Look, you have some very capable people there. There's young Lord Feng, young Lord Xian, and the 7th Prince. They're all spiritual lords. Maybe your team will win in the end. Ha ha. Duguyamo was almost in tears. How's that possible? The survival team has never won before. Sapphiro said, You may become the first winning survival team, then. Who knows? Ha 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 ha. Princess, princess. She wanted to beg Ranmil for help, but Ranmil only gave her a, there's nothing I can do look. Just then, crack. A wall suddenly rose in the center of the hall and surged all the way up. It was like a dark shadow. Chapter 1923 Xiao Wu, Help Me. Chapter 1923 Xiao Wu, Help Me. When they finally realized what was happening, a black wall had appeared between the two teams. It completely separated the two teams. The wall rose so fast that Duguyamo didn't even have time to see the satisfied smile on Feng Lu's face. Everything suddenly quieted down. Finally! Those annoying people are finally gone. I'm so happy. Feng Sun laughed when he saw that the other team was blocked by the wall. Feng Wu pressed her ear to the wall and listened carefully. No matter how hard she listened, she couldn't hear anything. It was as if there was no one on the other side. The other side should have reacted to Feng Sun's words if they heard him, but Feng Wu could hear any reaction at all. That was to say, the two teams were separated for good. Feng Sun had no idea of Feng Wu's careful observation, and was genuinely very happy. Xiao Wu, those annoying people are finally gone. We're finally on our own. Aren't you happy? Feng Wu looked at him helplessly. You really don't feel any pressure at all, do you? Feng Sun looked at Feng Wu and asked, What pressure? Feng Wu said, Don't worry about it. How can you not feel any pressure? Duguyamo stepped out and yelled at Feng Wu. Didn't you hear what the Black Robe Ghost King said? We're the survival team. We're the abandoned ones. We're all going to die. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Duguyamo stressed again, We're going to die. We really are. I'm sure of it. Feng Wu didn't even look at her. She knew that Duguyamo had almost been driven crazy by her brother. Feng Sun threw a dirty look at Duguyamo. I don't know about you, but we're not going to die. Duguyamo was perplexed. Young Lord Feng, why are you so confident of that? Feng Sun said matter-of-factly, Because we have Xiao Wu. Feng Wu. Duguyamo looked confused. What's that supposed to mean? Is she going to save us? Feng Sun found the question idiotic. Of course she is. You have no idea how awesome she is. Do you remember when we were in the treasure hall? Of course Duguyamo remembered. How could she forget? Feng Sun said, Xiao Wu wasn't there at the time, so I asked for her help in my head. You saw how it turned out. I was so lucky. Do you remember what I found? Duguyamo said, the purple sun sword, the blowing snow sword, and their corresponding swordplay manuals. Feng Sun gloated. That's right. All I did was ask for Xiao Wu's blessing in my head, and luck was on my side. Xiao Wu is here with us now. We're going to be very lucky. He then gave Duguyamo a contemptuous glance. Our team is going to win, and that's all you need to think about. Forget about everything else. Duguyamo smiled bitterly. Forget about everything else? How could she? She couldn't see how they were going to win. She leaned against the wall and looked like she had already lost all hope. Feng Sun was going to speak again, when Feng Wu shook her head. Enough chit-chat. Don't you know that we only have half the time of the other team to get through the trials? Chapter 1924, You Can Have My Life. Chapter 1924, You Can Have My Life. Yes, that's right. Feng Sun smacked his head and went to look for the staircase. Feng Wu knew why Ranmil's team was deemed the chosen team. For instance, on their side the staircase was right there in the open and they could just climb it. Whereas for the survival team, they needed to first find the staircase that could lead them to the next level. In her team, Feng Wu could only depend on herself, Feng Sun, and Xian Yi. As for Jun Linyun, she would call it a blessing if he didn't bring them even more trouble. She simply ignored Duguyamo, Feng Sang, and Feng Yiran. Just then. Ah! Someone shrieked at that moment. Feng Wu turned around with a frown and saw that Feng Sang was standing by the wall with a dagger over her head. It had a very thin blade. The dagger was about 10 centimeters long and glinted faintly in the dim light. It was quite creepy. Where did that come from? Feng Wu frowned and had a bad feeling. By then, Feng Sun and the others had come back. Xiao Wu, we've searched everywhere. There are no stairs. Feng Wu looked at Xian Yi. Xian Yi silently shook his head as well. Feng Wu then turned to Jun Linyun. Jun Linyun shook his head. There's nothing, my goddess. Is it possible that there are no stairs at all? Feng Yiran spoke first. Stop trying. You won't find anything. His face was full of despair as he leaned against the wall. He had given up. Everyone looked at him. Feng Yiran smiled bitterly. Didn't you notice? The hall was split in half, and the chosen team was on the side with the stairs. We have nothing on our side. How are we going to find it? Feng Yiran's words silenced everyone. Yes, how were they supposed to find something that wasn't there? Do you have no hope at all? Feng Sun frowned. Feng Sang smiled wryly. Didn't we lose all hope the moment we were assigned to this team? So, you're going to give up just like that? Feng Wu glanced at them. Duguyamo smirked. Or what? Are you going to get us out of here? Feng Sun stared at her. What's with that attitude? Duguyamo was half crazy by then, and she stared back at the young lord. What attitude? We're going to die. Why should I care? We're going to die? Says who? Feng Wu was as calm as usual. Ha ha ha, are you going to save us all? You can't be that delusional. Duguyamo guffawed. What if I can? Feng Wu glanced at her. If you can. Duguyamo cut her wrist open with a dagger. Blood splashed everywhere. That must hurt a lot. Feng Sang frowned. Duguyamo stared at Feng Wu, moved closer and whispered, If you can get me out of here, I swear that my life is yours from now on. Chapter 1925, Onlooker. Chapter 1925, Onlooker. Feng Wu said, All right. By the way, Xiao Wu, Feng Sun smacked his head as he remembered something. He then handed Feng Wu an item. This is for you. It was a brocade box that looked quite shabby. Guess what's inside? Feng Sun sounded quite pleased with himself. Feng Wu glanced at him. Is it a substitute talisman? What? Feng Sun looked like he had seen a ghost. How do you know that? Can you see through the box? Feng Wu opened it and saw that it really was a substitute talisman. She put it away with a smile and patted Feng Sun on the arm. I helped you get it. Of course I know what it is. You helped me? You weren't even there. But thanks to your blessing, I was so. Before he could finish. Whoosh! A flying dagger came at Feng Wu. It glinted coldly and was as fast as an arrow. Watch out! Feng Sun stepped out and caught the thin blade between his fingers. Is someone throwing weapons at us from some hidden corner? Feng Sun frowned. Show me. Feng Wu took the dagger and studied it. Seeing the material it was made from, how sharp it was, and its speed, Feng Wu's face darkened. Xiao Wu, what's wrong? Feng Sun realized that something wasn't right. It seems that our real trial has begun. Everyone get ready! Feng Wu shouted. Xiao Wu. Feng Sun and the others were all confused. Feng Wu said, this flying dagger wasn't thrown by a person. If I'm correct, it's from a triggered mechanism, and it's only an early warning. The real battle hasn't even started yet. Ha 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 ha! Just then, they heard someone guffawing above them. That laughter. Everyone looked up. And there it was. The malicious black-robed Ghost King's giant face was laughing again. Kiddo, you're correct. That was just a little hello. Your Grace. The others cried out in unison. The Ghost King stared at Feng Wu, enjoying the feeling of being in control. You can ask one question. Ask away, the Ghost King gloated. Can I switch to the chosen? Feng Wu covered Feng Sang's mouth before she could finish. If she really asked that question, their only chance would be wasted. Luckily, Feng Sun was clever enough and asked immediately, how do we find the stairs? Ha ha ha, boy, you've asked the right question. The Ghost King laughed. It's very straightforward. The staircase will open when you defeat the boss on each level. And here's a bonus. The chosen team doesn't need to do this. They just need to find the chance to run up those stairs. Ha ha. He was obviously very happy being an onlooker. But Feng Wu and her team weren't happy at all. Boss? What's that? I think it's something like the overlord of each floor. The other team has double our time. They don't have to defeat the bosses and only have to run up the stairs. That's why their level is difficult and ours is hell. This mission is impossible. They were still discussing it when... Chapter 1926, Untitled. Chapter 1926, Untitled. Whoosh. Suddenly, they heard the sound of something ripping through the air. It's the flying dagger again. Feng Sun shouted, dragging Feng Wu back to stand behind him. In the dim light, they could see the sharp blades glinting in the air. They were everywhere, and it was getting very dangerous. One would be severely injured if they were hit. Arg! That hurts! Among the sound of clashing blades, someone screamed. It was Feng Sang. She must have been hurt. Just then. Arg! I'm injured too! Duguyamo cried out as well. Feng Sun was protecting Feng Wu, moving his purple sun sword so fast that nothing could get to them. He said, Xiao Wu, you really are my lucky star. Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. Feng Sun said, because you helped me find the purple sun sword and the manual in the treasure hall earlier, I learned 2 moves when I wasn't busy. They're so useful now. See? No blade can get near us, hee hee. While Feng Sun was feeling satisfied, Feng Wu was rather anxious. Because she remembered clearly that the black-robed Ghost King had stressed repeatedly that they only had half the time of the other team. What if they couldn't pass the trial within that time, and couldn't get to the next floor? What would they have to face? Death. Death in this place should be real, just like what happened to Zhua Qingyu and Zhua Qingxian. Feng Wu didn't want to die. She still had a lot of plans she had to carry out. When she looked again, she saw that Feng Sun was having difficulty in stopping the daggers now. She looked up and frowned. There had only been about 100 daggers flying around at first, but now there were at least 1,000 of them. They were everywhere and had a ferocious air about them. Feng Sun had been able to chat with her at first, but he was frowning now, and sweat covered his forehead. Feng Yuan, Feng Sang, and Duguyamo were all hiding behind Feng Wu, who was in turn behind Feng Sun. That was a lot of pressure on one man. Feng Sun, Xian Yi, and Jun Linyun used everything they knew to wave their swords as fast as they could. Slowly, they moved closer together and formed a triangle. That was the only way they could protect the others behind them. "Can you take it?" asked Feng Wu. She was worried when she saw a cut on Feng Sun's arm. Feng Sun smiled bitterly. "Luckily, I have the purple sun sword. I would be dead by now if I were using some other sword." The sound of metal colliding continued. Feng Sun whispered to Feng Wu as he started a little storm with his sword, "Xiao Wu, I can't go on like this forever. 1 more minute, that's the most I can do." 1 minute. Feng Wu frowned and started thinking. While she was thinking calmly, those behind her couldn't stand it. 1 minute at most? Feng Sun, what do you mean? What happens after a minute? Are you saying that we can only live for another minute? Didn't Feng Wu brag about getting us out of here? We can't even make it through the first floor. Chapter 1927 Untitled. Chapter 1927 Untitled. Duguyamo, Feng Yuan, and Feng Sang couldn't stop any daggers, but they had tongues sharper than any blade. Feng Sun was frustrated. He was protecting these people, but they were accusing him now. How incredible! He then deliberately missed a dagger. Whoosh! The dagger flew past him. Arg! Feng Sang held her right arm and shrieked. Feng Sun smirked. "I don't have the energy to quarrel with you now, but don't worry. I never take my revenge the second day if I can do it now." He had just admitted that he had done it on purpose. Feng Sang wanted to retort, but Feng Sun's threat scared her too much. She could only bite her lower lip and remain silent. Feng Sun's plan worked. Just then, whoosh! The countless flying daggers all quietly fell to the floor and stopped moving. Feng Sun's eyes widened. Is this it? They've stopped moving. Are they admitting their defeat now? Have we passed the trial? Feng Wu frowned. They were winning. Why would they give up? Feng Sun tilted his head and said, "Have we passed some sort of time limit, so the Ghost King let us win?" Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. It was obvious that the Black-Robe Ghost King was a very biased judge. He wanted everything to play out his way. Unfortunately, the survival team wasn't his favorite. He preferred the other team. Therefore, the Ghost King would never let them go so easily. Watch out! Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun. If I've guessed correctly, the battle has just started. Ha 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 ha! There was the guffaw from the ceiling again. It was the onlooker, the Black-Robe Ghost King. Very clever. That's right, we're just getting started. You've only experienced the difficult level. Now, the hell level has begun. Ha ha! Feng Wu frowned. She didn't like the Ghost King's attitude. It was as if everyone were only playthings to him, despite the fact that they were fighting for their lives. Damn you! Feng Wu thought with clenched fists. She decided that she would find the chance to punch him in the nose. I know how much you want to punch me. You'll get the chance as long as you can get to the 7th floor. Unfortunately, you're going to die here. Ha ha! With a wave of his hand, the motionless flying daggers started to make crackling sounds. Shit! Feng Sun cried out, they're sticking to each other now. He turned around and told Feng Wu, look. The flying daggers were moving individually before, but now, they're gathering together. They've become a flying sword. The flying sword would be several times more powerful than the daggers. Feng Sun paled, and the others felt even worse. Feng Yiran, Feng Sang, and Duguyamo shook from head to toe. Oh shit! We're going to die. I thought we would have a chance, but we can't even get past the first floor. What else can Feng Wu do apart from brag? Since they thought they were going to die, they didn't care about anything else. They ignored Feng Sun's threat and started complaining. Chapter 1928. Chapter 1928, Untitled. What was Feng Wu doing? She was racking her brain with a big frown on her face. What could it be? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes, kept her gaze straight forward, and remained motionless. Just then, an idea seemed to strike her for a brief moment, but it flashed by so fast that by the time Feng Wu realized it, it was gone. Feng Wu tried very hard to think, but she just couldn't recall it. Thump, thump, thump. Just then, they heard the loud noise of a beating heart. What's that? They turned in the direction of the sound and saw a red heart behind them. It was only the size of a baby's fist, but the sound it made was very loud. Where did that heart come from? Was it there before? Listen. It's beating forcibly. Hey, don't you think that it's expanding? It is. It was only the size of a baby's fist just then, but it's the size of an adult fist now. And it's growing as we speak. Why do I have a bad feeling? Why does my heart feel like it's going to explode? Feng Wu was the first to figure it out. If I've guessed correctly, it's a timer. Feng Wu took a deep breath. We'll fail this trial when that heart explodes. Feng Sun said, so if it explodes, Feng Wu said, it'll mean that we've lost. And the consequence would be. Everyone's pupils contracted as they looked at the growing heart. It wasn't a sign of life. It was the herald of death. Crack. The daggers had gathered together by now. Every 100 blades combined into a sword. Whoosh! A sword charged at them. And it was several times more powerful than the daggers. It cut Feng Sun's arm open, the wound so deep that everybody could see bone. Seeing this, Duguyamo was filled with despair. Oh no, I'm really going to die this time. Feng Lu, I'll never forgive you. Whoosh! As more swords charged at them, Feng Sun was covered in more and more cuts. He wasn't alone. Xian Yi and Jun Linyun were injured as well. Duguyamo, Feng Yiran, and Feng Sang all had cuts on them, and their clothes were stained with blood. Feng Sang stared jealously at Feng Wu. Shielded by Feng Sun, Xian Yi, and Jun Linyun, Feng Wu was unscathed. Not only wasn't she hurt, she didn't need to do anything. Feng Sang bellowed, Feng Wu, how long are you going to hide behind them? Aren't you supposed to be so awesome? Didn't you say that you were going to get us out of here? What are you doing now? Are you going to hide behind them forever? You're shameless. Duguyamo looked at Feng Wu and smirked. She's always bragging about herself. Do you actually expect her to control these daggers? Chapter 1929. Chapter 1929, Untitled. Duguyamo and Feng Sang wouldn't stop criticizing Feng Wu, but after hearing what Duguyamo said, Feng Wu became very quiet. Control the blades. Control the blades. A blade cut Feng Sun's cheek open, and blood splashed everywhere, but he didn't even frown. He turned to look at the heart on the wall, the thing that Feng Wu called a timer. By then, it had grown to the size of a plate, and they could clearly see the blood vessels in it. The wall of the heart was getting thinner and thinner. It was as if it was going to explode the next second. This time, Feng Sun was really anxious. He turned around and saw that Feng Wu was still frowning and deep in thought. Xiao Wu, we're all counting on you. We can't hold on for much longer, thought Feng Sun. All of a sudden, an idea struck Feng Wu, and this time, she caught it in time. I got it! Feng Wu grabbed Feng Sun in excitement. I know what to do. Feng Sun, give me that magnet. Quickly. The magnet? Feng Sun looked puzzled. How do you know I have that? Feng Sun had found the magnet in the treasure hall. It wasn't a top-notch treasure, and he didn't know what to do with it, so he just casually stuffed it into his pocket. Feng Wu said, I let you find it. Of course I know you have it. Give it to me. Feng Sun smiled wryly. Did you actually believe it when I said that it was because of your blessing? Little Feng Wu, you're so adorable. Feng Wu said, the magnet. Time was of the essence here, and Feng Wu didn't want to argue with Feng Sun now. The magnet. The magnet. Feng Sun searched his memory before he smacked his forehead and said, Yes, I did find it, but it was too heavy and I didn't know how to use it, so. Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun. Please don't tell me you threw it away. Feng Sun said, No, I didn't. I just put it on the table and didn't take it with me when I left. Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun and wanted to smack him on the head. You didn't bring it with you. Feng Sun, how can you be so stupid? Feng Wu was so frustrated. That magnet is our key to passing this trial, and you lost it. Feng Sun said, Huh? Feng Wu wanted to bite him. Are you talking about this black stone? Someone asked gingerly behind them. It was Duguyamo. She opened a wooden box which contained a black stone. This one? Yes. Feng Sun frowned. Why do you have it? Duguyamo said, Young Lord Feng, you couldn't take so many things with you and left this behind, so I picked it up. Even if it isn't a real treasure, I won't look so empty-handed at least. Feng Wu glanced at Duguyamo and nodded. You've done us a great favor. Duguyamo was confused. Really? Can this lousy stone solve our problem? Feng Wu, you must be dreaming. She wasn't the only one who thought that. The others all gave her strange looks as well. Feng Wu didn't explain. She asked Feng Sun, Can you hold on for one more minute? Chapter 1930. Chapter 1930, Untitled. Yes. Feng Sun wiped away the blood on his face. I can even make it 2 minutes if you can solve the trial. Feng Wu nodded. After taking the magnet, Feng Wu crouched down and began to study it. Duguyamo glanced at her and shook her head. She didn't believe that the magnet could solve their problem because it just sounded ridiculous. With a crack, Feng Wu crushed the magnet and poured the black particles onto a piece of white paper. She smiled. Once the black particles were separated, Feng Sun, I need to move through these flying swords for 30 seconds. Can you think of a way for me to do that? Asked Feng Wu. Feng Sun and Xian Yi exchanged a look. Together, the purple sun sword and the blowing snow sword can only buy you 20 seconds. 20 seconds, Feng Wu thought for a moment and nodded. That'll do. She then nodded at Feng Sun. Let's begin. Immediately after that, she was nowhere to be seen. Quickly, draw all the flying swords here. Feng Yiran, keep hiding there, and I'll come after you. Feng Sun bellowed. I'll use you people as my shield. With nowhere else to hide, Feng Yiran and the others had to inch forward and take part in the dangerous battle. Whoosh! Feng Wu ran around the room, making seemingly random turns. No one knew what she was doing. Feng Yiran was filled with resentment. Whoosh! He screamed when he failed to dodge a blade. Whoosh! Feng Sang was hit in the chest. Whoosh! Duguyamo was hit in the leg. Whoosh! The blades ripped through the air and people kept screaming. Even Jun Linyun was wounded in the chest, let alone the others. Luckily, the wound was on the right side. What's Feng Wu doing? Feng Yiran thought angrily. Feng Sun couldn't hold on for much longer. He had no idea what Feng Wu was doing, and was gradually losing hope. Thud! 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 Feng Sun had been stabbed by over a dozen flying daggers by now, but he went on fighting. His vision was going bleary from the loss of blood, and he could barely see. Chase me! Stop picking on them! I'm the captain here. Come on! Standing in an empty spot, Feng Wu provoked the flying swords. At those words, the swords suddenly turned around and charged at Feng Wu, as if they had minds of their own. They all flew at Feng Wu with whooshing sounds. They looked like a swarm of flies. With the murderous energy around them, the blades reminded one of a giant tidal wave. Shit! Xiao Wu! My goddess! Xian Yi, Feng Sun, and Jun Linyun had nearly been crushed by the flying swords, but as soon as Feng Wu shouted those words, the swords ignored them and went after Feng Wu. They could take a break now, but what about Feng Wu? The entire room was vibrating with the flying blades. What would happen to Feng Wu? She would be turned into a sea urchin. Xiao Wu! Feng Sun was almost in tears. Xiao Wu! Don't do this! How am I supposed to tell Boss Jun what happened to you? Xiao Wu! Feng Yiran and the others were all astonished as well. Chapter 1931. Chapter 1931, Untitled. Feng Wu had lured all the flying swords away on her own. Was she such a selfless person? Duguyamo felt a little guilty. She had accused Feng Wu of being heartless and selfish, but as it turned out, Feng Wu had chosen to use such an extreme method to protect them. I'm sorry. I didn't actually expect you to save us. I was just venting my anger on you, Feng Wu. While everyone was digesting the news that Feng Wu had died for them. Hey, why are all of you crying? Feng Wu showed up and greeted them with a smile. What? Feng Wu. You're still alive. Are you not dead? I thought you were dead. Xiao Wu! Feng Sun was the most excited of them all. He wrapped his arms around Feng Wu and burst into tears, crying so hard that he almost couldn't breathe. Xiao Wu, you're still alive. Xiao Wu, I'm so happy. He jumped around and yelled incoherently, and was nothing like the noble young lord he was supposed to be. Feng Wu patted him on the head and looked confused. Why would I be dead? Why did you all think that I died? Do I seem so useless to you? But didn't you die for us just then? Feng Sun started complaining before he wiped away his tears. You silly girl. Who told you to do such a thing? You're never doing that again. Feng Wu was speechless. Why did they think that she would die for them? She cherished her own life very much, all right. Wait, where did the flying swords go? Duguyamo was the first to realize that something wasn't right. Soon, the others realized it as well. As they spoke, there were no daggers flying around in the air. What was going on? Hey there! Look, they're on the wall! Feng Sang shouted. Whoosh! Immediately, all eyes were on the wall. The shiny blades looked like they were glued to the wall and were making rumbling sounds as they tried to break free, but an invisible force seemed to be holding them in place, rendering their efforts futile. Why are all the daggers on the wall? What happened? Feng Sun asked. Xiao Wu, did you do that? And what's that shape? I don't understand. Feng Wu chuckled. Well, that shape. It's what I want to tell the owner of the blades. Feng Wu gloated. How strange. Is that a finger? What does it mean? Feng Sun was even more curious. Feng Wu smiled. She had arranged the daggers into the shape of a middle finger. What did it mean? Well, everyone in her previous life should recognize it right away, but here in this world, only she did. It doesn't matter what it means. The most important thing is that I get to vent my anger. Feng Wu breathed out. Xiao Wu, how did you do it? Feng Sun stopped trying to figure out the shape. He was more curious about how Feng Wu had done it. What he saw was... Chapter 1932. Chapter 1932, Untitled. It's because of the magnet, Feng Wu said matter-of-factly. It has opposite magnetic poles. One side will attract the iron, but the other side will repel it. When the magnetic powder of both poles is mixed together, it won't affect the blades, but when they're separated, I can tell one pole from the other. One will attract the iron, while the other won't. Luckily for us, most of the magnetic powder here can attract the iron. Therefore, I tried to spray as much magnetic powder on the walls as possible, and they pulled the blades away. Once the blades are caught, it's not easy for them to break free again. Therefore, all I needed to do was arrange the powder in the shape of a finger and wait for the blades to get stuck. That's all. Feng Sun said, I don't understand. Duguyamo shook her head as well. That's too difficult. I don't understand a word. What are you talking about? Feng Wu patted her shoulder with a smile. That's okay. You only need to know that we won. Duguyamo froze on the spot. Feng Wu had just patted her on the shoulder. Feng Wu had made physical contact with her. Should she push Feng Wu away? But that was a friendly gesture. Would it be inappropriate to push her away? Duguyamo felt conflicted. Arg! The heart. Only then did they remember the heart. The constantly expanding heart. When they turned around, they saw that the wall of the heart had grown so thin that the heart could burst at any moment. Phew! They all let out breaths of relief. So, we've passed this trial? Feng Sang asked. Before they knew it, they were already treating Feng Wu as the captain of the survival team. Crack! A rope ladder dropped from above. Feng Wu smiled a little. That's right. We passed the trial. Yeah. Everyone smiled excitedly. Duguyamo didn't join the others as they celebrated, but only studied Feng Wu carefully. How was Feng Wu able to solve the problem for them? Duguyamo still couldn't figure out how the magnet got the daggers stuck to the wall. The second floor. Here we go. Feng Wu led the team, followed by Feng Sun, Xian Yi, Jun Linyun, Feng Yiran, Feng Sang, and Duguyamo. While Duguyamo's attitude toward Feng Wu was changing, Feng Yiran and Feng Sang remained the same. They didn't need a reason to dislike her. What would they find on the second floor? Xiao Wu, what do you think we'll find on the second floor? Feng Sun asked curiously. Feng Wu said, the flying daggers on the first floor are metal. If we find wood on the second floor, we'll be able to deduce the elements to be found on the floors after that. Teehee, Feng Sang chuckled. Feng Sun frowned. Why are you laughing? Feng Sang said, I'm laughing because someone sounds so sure when all she's doing is making a guess. I'm so impressed. Chapter 1933. Chapter 1933, Untitled. Feng Sun frowned because he didn't like the way Feng Sang put it. However, they arrived at the second floor before he could say anything. Only then did they realize what the Black-Robe Ghost King was talking about when he said that each floor was a different world of its own. The second floor was filled with vibrant green plants. The ground was covered by grass and meter-high bushes, but the most eye-catching object was a tree. What a tree! The trunk of the tree was so thick that 10 people would barely get their arms around it. The branches seemed to extend outward forever. Feng Wu estimated that they were nearly 1,000 meters long. The tree was so tall that the top seemed to touch the clouds. Other than the grass, the brushes, and the trees, there was nothing else. There were no birds, bugs, or beasts of any kind. This place is full of the wood element. Feng Sun shifted his gaze away from the tree and glanced at Feng Sang. Considering what she had said a moment ago, what they saw on the second floor was like a slap to Feng Sang's face. There was so much wood here. Feng Sang was speechless. She should have kept her mouth shut. Feng Sun went back to studying the small world, but he still couldn't figure out what they were supposed to do. Thump, thump, thump. He heard a familiar sound. Feng Sun's stomach lurched. His eyes widened as he tried to figure out where the sound was coming from. There! Duguyamo was the first to spot it. A beating heart dangled from one of the branches. It was still quite small and about the size of a baby's fist. But everyone drew in their breaths because they had experienced it once. The heart would rapidly grow big before it exploded. And once it did, everyone would die. Seeing that the heart was beating fast and expanding as they watched, Feng soon paled. He asked Feng Wu, "Xiao Wu, have you figured out what we're supposed to do in this trial?" There was a giant tree and some grass. If there wasn't a question, how were they supposed to solve it? Everyone was baffled. Even Feng Wu was confused, let alone Feng Sun. All eyes were on Feng Wu now. She frowned and said the truth. "I don't know." Immediately, everyone paled. If even Feng Wu had no answer. "How can you not know?" Duguyamo stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at her in bewilderment. "Why must I know?" Duguyamo said, "Aren't you the team leader? A team leader is supposed to know everything. Even if you don't, the least you can do is to comfort us by not telling us the truth." Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She found Duguyamo's suggestion idiotic. "I'm sorry, but I'm the youngest one here. It's not my duty to spoil you people." That successfully shut Duguyamo up. Only then did they realize something. Feng Wu was indeed the youngest one here. Moreover, there were 5 years when she hadn't been able to cultivate. Immediately, everyone fell silent. The air felt so heavy that they had difficulty breathing. Thump, thump, thump. The disturbing heart wasn't affected at all. It went on thumping. Chapter 1934. Chapter 1934, Untitled. How terrifying! Ha ha! Just then, they heard familiar laughter. It's the Black-Robe Ghost King. They had found the Ghost King intimidating at first, but now, his voice somehow felt so kind. As expected, the giant face appeared in the air again. "Silly kids. You can only keep on waiting if I don't tell you what this trial is about. Then the heart will explode and you'll all, you'll all be buried, and there'll be nothing left of you. I can't wait to see that." Hearing this, everyone was filled with despair. The Ghost King had an erratic temper, and no one could anticipate what he would do. Moreover, he was so powerful that when he laughed, the air seemed to tear open. Everyone felt their eardrums prickle and their heads swim. "No, you won't do that." While Feng Sun and the others were too shocked to speak, Feng Wu stepped out. The Ghost King, who had been guffawing, now stared at Feng Wu with an eerie, malicious look in his eyes. Immediately, everyone fell silent. Feng Sun was worried about Feng Wu. This was the Black-Robe Ghost King's territory, and they were all at his mercy. Feng Wu was pushing it too far. Immediately, the Ghost King turned to look at Feng Wu. "What did you say?" He narrowed his eyes, and the pressure in the room seemed to increase. Feng Wu smiled. "I said that you won't do that." Whoosh! A dark shadow flitted through the air. The next second, Feng Wu was snatched up by the Ghost King. Poor Feng Wu hung suspended in the air with the Ghost King's giant hand around her neck. He could kill her at any moment. "Xiao Wu!" Feng Sun jumped. His pupils contracted, and his heart raced. But the Black-Robe Ghost King was too powerful for him to do anything. Feng Sun, Xian Yi, and Jun Linyun all drew out their swords. They were ready to charge out. But Feng Wu gestured behind her back for them to stop. "Xiao Wu!" At the thought of how smart Feng Wu was, Feng Sun gritted his teeth and stopped the others. "Wait!" The Black-Robe Ghost King paid no attention to Feng Sun. Staring at Feng Wu, he asked, "Why?" Feng Wu said, "Because you don't like to follow the rules. You like to have fun and be a happy onlooker. It's not that you want the chosen team to win. Rather, you're just used to seeing them win." Before the Ghost King could say anything, Feng Wu quickly said, "But do you like such a predictable outcome? After all these years, haven't you had enough?" The Ghost King had planned to snap Feng Wu's neck, but hearing this, he paused. Feng Wu talked even faster now. "We're called the survival team because that's what we're supposed to do. We need to fight with all we can to make the impossible possible. I bet you've never seen such a thing happen before." Chapter 1935. Chapter 1935, Untitled. Feng Wu kept her unblinking gaze on the Ghost King. She was betting that he would enjoy that. No one dared to make a sound. Feng Sun and the others stared at the Ghost King's hand, worried that he might throttle Feng Wu. Feng Wu stared at the Ghost King. The look on the Ghost King's lean face was proud and indescribable. He suddenly frowned. The air seemed to freeze. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. All of a sudden, ha 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 ha! The black-robed Ghost King suddenly burst out laughing. Ha 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 ha! Once he started, he couldn't stop. Feng Wu was finally a little relieved. She had probably made the right choice. As expected, the Ghost King released her neck, patted her slim shoulder, and chuckled. Kid, I didn't know you're such a good storyteller. Good, very good. I was going to throttle you. Do you know why? He stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said, Because I know the White Fairy. The Ghost King gave her another look. That's right. You've gained her recognition, which is why I don't like you. With the cold look in his eyes, the Ghost King looked very intimidating. However, he suddenly burst out laughing and patted Feng Wu's thin arm hard. Ha ha ha! You're an interesting girl. No wonder she treats you differently. I like what you said. I think I'll give it a go. The Ghost King gave her an appreciative look and said slowly, The second trial is quite straightforward. There are 1,000,000 4-leaf flowers here, and you need to find a 3-leaf flower. He pointed at the growing heart dangling from the tree. Before it explodes. If you can find it, I'll tell you the objective for the next floor. The Ghost King then rubbed Feng Wu's head before he disappeared. Everyone was speechless. They had no idea that things would turn out this way. Did the Ghost King let Feng Wu go just like that? He told Feng Wu the objective just like that. He even rubbed her head before he left. Feng Yiran, Feng Sang, and Duguyamo looked at one another, and no one knew what to say. Feng Sun finally realized what had happened. Seeing Feng Wu land on the ground, he took her hand excitedly. Xiao Wu, is the Ghost King helping us? Feng Wu didn't feel so optimistic. She shook her head. If I've guessed right, this is the death level, because the hell level should have given us a hint. Feng Sun opened his eyes wide and said angrily, Are you saying that the Ghost King tricked us? Feng Wu shrugged. Even if he did, do we have a choice? Feng Sun was rendered speechless. They were in the Ghost King's territory, and he was the one calling the shots. Feng Sun couldn't do a thing. Luckily, he's neutral now and has given us a fair chance, Feng Wu said seriously. Duguyamo said, How can it be fair? We're still at hell level with half the amount of time. Chapter 1936. Chapter 1936, Untitled. Feng Wu smiled. Even so, we can still complete the trial. Duguyamo wouldn't believe it. The branches of this tree cover an area of over 1,000 meters. How are we supposed to find one flower out of 1,000,000? Everyone fell silent as soon as Duguyamo said those words. Yes, 1 in 1,000,000. How were they going to find it? Feng Sun frowned. We still need to look for it. What are all of you doing? Start searching. Seeing that Feng Wu was deep in thought, Feng Sun gave the order. I'll search the east side, Xian Yi will search the west, the prince will do the south, and as for the north, Feng Yiran, the three of you had better work hard. Feng Sun was considered an authoritative figure here. Seeing that Feng Wu didn't object, everyone started searching. But the tree was simply too big, and it felt like they were searching an ocean. How were they going to find one flower out of 1,000,000? It wouldn't be so bad if there wasn't a time limit. If they had unlimited time, they could search each flower in turn until they found it. But now, time was of the essence. This heart won't last more than 15 minutes. Rubbing her chin, Feng Wu was deep in thought. It's too difficult to find one flower out of 1,000,000. Feng Yiran was the first to give up 3 minutes later. He ran up to Feng Wu, stared at her, and shook his head. No, it's an impossible task. Feng Wu looked back at him. Feng Yiran said, I focused all my attention on it for the past 3 minutes. I didn't dare go any faster, because I was afraid that I might miss it. In 3 minutes, I was only able to search 300 flowers. At that rate, the heart will explode in 15 minutes, Feng Wu said quietly. Feng Yiran became even more despairing. 15 minutes? That means I can only search a few thousand at most. I can't even do 10,000. Frustrated, he grabbed his hair and growled desperately, What should we do now? Seeing this, Feng Sang also stopped searching and ran to their side. She stared at Feng Wu and said seriously, It's impossible. We have to find another way, or the explosion will kill us. Suddenly, Feng Yiran looked up and stared at Feng Wu. The look in his eyes gave her the creep. Xiao Wu. Feng Yiran took her hands. Xiao Wu, the black-robed ghost king likes you, doesn't he? He complimented you, right? He was friendly to you. Feng Yiran, what do you mean? Hearing the commotion, Feng Sun stopped what he was doing, ran to Feng Wu's side, and shoved Feng Yiran away. Feng Yiran said matter-of-factly, I'm just begging Xiao Wu. Since the Ghost King likes Xiao Wu, I'm sure he'll listen to her if she begs him. Right? Right? Feng Yiran looked like a drowning man clutching a straw as he shook from head to toe. You're nuts! Feng Sun kicked him away. Feng Yiran flew a long distance, but he soon stumbled back and yelled at Feng Sun, The mission is impossible. You come up with an idea then. Chapter 1937. Chapter 1937, Untitled. Feng Yiran pointed at the heart. Do you see that? It'll last for 15 minutes at most. 15 minutes later, it'll explode. And we'll all die. All of us. Feng Yiran pointed at Feng Wu. If she can help us, why won't she do it? Are you an idiot? Feng Sun kicked him in frustration. How is she supposed to do that? Feng Yiran said, The Ghost King is obviously interested in her, so all she needs to do is… Boom! Feng Sun was furious. The guy was Feng Wu's family. How could he say such a thing? Go to hell. Feng Sun began to throw punches at Feng Yiran. Feng Sun was scared. That black-robed Ghost King was unpredictable, and no one knew what he was thinking. What if he had never thought that way, and Feng Yiran's words suddenly gave him ideas? Please forgive me. Forgive me, Feng Yiran spat out mouthfuls of blood. Brother, are you all right? Feng Sang rushed out and shielded her brother. Feng Wu frowned and told Feng Sun, I still need him. Don't kill him just yet. And go examine the flowers. Do as many as you can. Feng Sun was still angry, but Feng Wu had spoken. Humph! Feng Sun gave Feng Yiran one last kick. You get to live for a few more minutes. He quickly ran off after that. Time ticked by. But their progress was so slow. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes. He would look back at Feng Wu every now and then. They only had 3 minutes left, but Xiao Wu was still walking back and forth under the tree. Would she be able to come up with something? 13 minutes, 14 minutes. Soon, there was only 1 minute left. What would she do? Everyone was asking the question in their heads. Xiao Wu, they couldn't go on searching anymore. All their eyes had gone blurry. That heart is going to explode. Are we going to die this time? They all lost hope. Jun Linyun still wanted to try his luck. We may not die even if the heart explodes, right? Maybe he was just bluffing. Ha ha! Just then, the familiar face appeared in the air again. I'm bluffing? You're so funny. The black-robed Ghost King smirked. I'll show you what the explosion will do. After that, the Ghost King waved his hand. White light flashed, and the heart was about to explode. Everyone paled. Wait! Feng Wu stepped out at the critical moment. There's 1 minute left. We haven't failed yet. Please wait. Feng Wu looked at the Black Robe Ghost King. Since this is a game to you, you have to follow the rules. Feng Wu stared at the Ghost King. The Ghost King looked at her with cold eyes. Are you threatening me? Feng Wu said, No, I'm only reminding you. The Ghost King glared at Feng Wu. Chapter 1938. Chapter 1938, Untitled. Feng Wu said, 20 seconds have passed since then. If you're trying to stall us so that the chosen team can win, I have nothing to say. Despite the Black Robe Ghost King's intimidating power, Feng Wu wasn't scared. The look in her eyes remained undaunted. Hearing that, the Ghost King smirked. Fine. I'd like to see how you turn things around in the last 40 seconds. I can't wait. How are they going to do that? Feng Sun and the others all looked at Feng Wu. Feng Sun smiled bitterly. Even if they had 40 seconds left, what good would it do? They were doomed to fail, weren't they? But Feng Wu smiled because an idea had just struck her. I know how to find the three-leaf flower. 30 seconds are more than enough. Feng Wu smiled at the Black Robe Ghost King and walked up to the giant old tree. 30 seconds. Impossible. Of course, the Black Robe Ghost King didn't believe her. He wasn't the only one. The others didn't believe her either. They had worked so hard and were only able to examine a few dozen thousand flowers in total. How could Feng Wu find it in as short as 30 seconds? But Feng Wu didn't have time to explain. She walked right up to the giant old tree and put her fair hand on the tree trunk. Is she searching with her mental power? Duguyamo frowned. I tried that. It doesn't work. Feng Sun nodded as well. It was true. He had tried with his mental power as well, but it wasn't efficient enough. It would be impossible for Feng Wu to find the flower in 30 seconds. She's bragging. Feng Sang snorted. We only have 30 seconds left, and she's still bragging. What's wrong with her? Feng Sun glared at her. Shut up. Xiao Wu will do it. Feng Sang retorted. How is she going to do it then? With her mental power? That rendered Feng Sun speechless. Feng Sang said, How can she possibly succeed? If we die here, what will become of us? The Black Robe Ghost King glanced at Feng Sang. After you die, you'll obviously become ghosts. Arg. No. I don't want to become a ghost. Feng Sang and Duguyamo were almost scared to tears. They trembled and wept. I don't want to die. I don't want to stay here forever. I don't. But if Feng Wu lost, that was going to be their end. Feng Sun clenched his fists and kept his gaze on Feng Wu, their last hope. He said, Xiao Wu, you can do it. Jun Linyan said eagerly, My goddess, you're going to get us out of here, aren't you? You're so smart. You're the smartest person I've ever met apart from my brother. Even Xian Yi held his breath and stared at Feng Wu. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. Thump, thump, thump. The heart went on beating and expanding. It had almost turned transparent, and blue veins were popping out. Chapter 1939. Chapter 1939, Untitled. It could explode at any moment. With each beat of the heart, Feng Sang and Duguyamo trembled and sobbed. We're going to die. I don't want to die. Duguyamo said, If we can survive this, I won't pick on Feng Wu again. Feng Sang said, If I can get through this, I'll work very hard on my cultivation. I promise. 8 seconds. 7 seconds. 6 seconds. By then, even Feng Sun was trembling. 5 seconds. 4 seconds. 3 seconds. Jun Linyun had lost all hope and murmured, Is that it? Are we really going to die? While everyone was panicking, Feng Wu suddenly moved. She jumped into the branches like a nimble cat. Where's Feng Wu? Why can't I see her? Where did she go? Ha ha ha, it's going to explode in 3, 2. The black-robed Ghost King smirked, and was going to count down to 0. Everyone paled. And they were filled with despair. Feng Wu suddenly landed on the ground, and there was a pink 3-leaf flower in her palm, like a little fairy. The black-robed Ghost King's announcement was cut short. He looked like he had just been slapped. Is this the one? Feng Wu beamed at the Ghost King. The Ghost King said, You found it. Feng Wu nodded. If this is the flower you meant. Judging by the astonished look on the Ghost King's face, Feng Wu knew that she had found it. Moreover, Feng Wu looked down at the giant heart. It was the size of a washing basin and was going to explode in another second. Yes, it is. The Ghost King took the flower from Feng Wu and studied it for a while. He then turned to Feng Wu and narrowed his eyes. How did you do it? The others were as curious as he was. That's right, Xiao Wu. How did you do it? Feng Sun was pleasantly surprised. Dugu Yamo and Feng Sang hugged each other and burst into happy tears. Hearing this, they turned around and pricked up their ears. Feng Wu smiled. I used my mental power. That was all. I don't believe you. Feng Sang protested. We tried that method as well, but it wasn't quick or comprehensive enough. Plus, it drains your spiritual essence very quickly. It doesn't work. Feng Wu chuckled. Have you forgotten what I am? What are you? I'm a medicine refiner. Feng Wu shrugged. Medicine refiners are experts in the wood element, and they can communicate much better with plant spirit. I didn't use my mental power to discern the flower. I diagnosed it. Diagnose. Everyone was shocked. That method had never occurred to them. Feng Wu smiled. Yes, diagnose. If 4-leaf flowers are the norm, is the only 3-leaf flower a mutation? If it is, then I can detect it. Chapter 1940 Untitled. Chapter 1940 Untitled. So, I diagnosed the old tree the way I would a human being. As expected, I found an area that was sick. Feng Wu pointed at a horizontal branch in the northeast. It was on that branch, so I was able to cross all the other branches off the list. Everyone was astonished. Was that even possible? It was true. They had never thought of such a way. Even the black-robed Ghost King was hearing it for the first time, let alone Dugu Yamo, Feng Sun, and the others. It was such a novel idea that they all stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu went on smiling. After I confirmed the branch, I could exclude 90% of the flowers, and I was able to focus on one area. But it's a long branch. I wouldn't have enough time to scan it from one end to the other. So, Feng Wu smiled. I talked to the plant spirit. I told the 3-leaf flower that if it could tell me where it was, I would treat it. You can talk to the plant spirit. The black-robed Ghost King looked at Feng Wu in amazement. Feng Wu grinned. Of course. Everyone else found it incredible, but Feng Wu didn't say anything else. Because she really could do it. Because she still had a card up her sleeve, the fairy in her mind. The fairy had given her the 12 trials of love, which were getting harder and harder. The fairy was worried that Feng Wu would complain, so had hidden away. Feng Wu usually ignored her. But the fairy was useful now, so she had dragged her out. The 3-leaf flower lay quietly in Feng Wu's palm. Just like that, I found it. It tried to hide from me, but where could it go? Feng Wu smiled at the Ghost King. Have we passed the trial? The Ghost King stared at Feng Wu with a cold look in his eyes. He had thought that the girl had just been full of hot air when she said that she would lead the survival team to success, but he didn't expect that the girl could pass 2 trials in a row. She had surprised him twice. She really was an amazing girl. Do you really want to win? He stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu returned his stare. The Ghost King narrowed his eyes. No one had been able to stay so calm in front of him before. Even the girl in the chosen team isn't as level-headed as you. The black-robed Ghost King suddenly chuckled. Interesting. Very interesting. I want to live, Feng Wu said seriously. Good. The Ghost King looked at Feng Wu, sensing her vitality and her desire to live. He looked into the distance and seemed to be lost in thought. If I had been like you back then, I wouldn't have. Forget it. The Ghost King glanced at Feng Wu. Go ahead. If you can pass the next test, I'll tell you a secret. After that, he slowly disappeared into thin air. A staircase was lowered down for them. Wow. Stairs. Did we finally pass the second floor? This is great. We survived. We're so lucky to have Feng Wu here. Feng Sun rolled his eyes at Feng Sang and Duguyamo. I told you already. Xiao Wu can always come up with a way. Do you see that now? Chapter 1941 Untitled. Chapter 1941 Untitled. Feng Sang said, I didn't say that she couldn't do it. Duguyamo said, That's right. We were just worried. Feng Sang and Duguyamo looked at each other. Feng Wu had saved their skin at the last moment twice already, and they had no reason to doubt her anymore. Now, let's go to the next floor. We'll live once we get all the way up to the 7th floor. Feng Sun was quite excited. Feng Wu was about to throw away the flower, but, Hey! What are you doing? The fairy stared at Feng Wu and snapped, That's good stuff. How can you throw it away? Feng Wu was confused. Isn't it a mutated flower? The fairy asked, What do you think of the abnormal flame? Feng Wu said, Good, of course. The fairy asked, What about a mutated flower? Feng Wu said, Are you saying that it's useful? Do you know how that old tree procreates? Asked the fairy. How? It doesn't have any seeds. It uses flowers. And of the millions of flowers. The fairy looked at Feng Wu in resignation. Only the 3-leaf flower is the seed, and the rest are all ordinary flowers. Feng Wu, the fairy said, even the black-robed Ghost King doesn't know that. Plant it in the ring space before it dies. Feng Wu said, What's in it for me? The fairy stared at her in disbelief. Feng Wu asked, Why are you looking at me like that? The fairy said, Do you want to bring back your beautiful master or not? Feng Wu said, Of course I do. I would trade my life for my master's in a heartbeat. The fairy asked, Do you know what this tree can do then? Feng Wu said, What can it do? It's an ancient tongue tree, and there are few records of it because it has almost become extinct on the continent. Come to think of it, there's something about the plant in the anecdotes of the continent. Yes. Her eyes suddenly lit up. I remember. It can prolong life. It has the Tai wood spirit which can prolong life. The fairy nodded. That's right. It can do that. Your beautiful master has been unconscious for ages. He's weak. If you have an ancient tongue tree which can provide him with constant Tai wood spiritual energy, I'll plant it. I'll plant it now. Feng Wu was over the moon. She would stop at nothing to help her beautiful master. Little Phoenix, who had been silent until now, said excitedly, I never knew that there was still an ancient tongue tree on the continent. The only one that's over 10,000 years old can procreate and have 3-leaf flowers. We hit the jackpot this time. Just then, Feng Sun, who was climbing the stairs, turned to look at Feng Wu. Xiao Wu, let's go. We don't have much time left. All right. I'll be right there. Feng Wu waved at Feng Sun. She then asked the fairy, So, I just plant it. Is that it? Of course not. The fairy rolled her eyes at Feng Wu. It requires a lot of preparation. Otherwise, why would people call it the last resort to save one's life? Feng Wu asked, What do I need to prepare? Chapter 1942 Untitled. Chapter 1942 Untitled. You'll need a water dragon ball and fire dragon ball to build a foundation, and for endless energy flow, you'll need the essence of earth. With the support of the Tai wood spirit, The next time your beautiful master wakes up, it'll be for much longer. I'll do it. Feng Wu clenched her fist. Of course I'll do it. But what are Water Dragon Ball, Fire Dragon Ball, and the essence of Earth? Feng Wu was confused. I don't know about other places, but since there's an ancient tongue tree on the second floor, it means that you must be able to find those three on the next few floors, because they always come together. Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu in excitement. You have to pass the next few trials. We have to find those things. Feng Wu said, all right. If they're not there, I'll make that black robe ghost king spit them out. The thought of having her beautiful master awake all the time and by her side made Feng Wu fearless. Xiao Wu? Xiao Wu? Feng Sun called her anxiously. Feng Wu said, I'm coming. The third floor. When everyone left the last step, whoosh. The scene changed so fast that it made them dizzy. When they looked up, they saw that they were on a beach. The sky was as blue as the sea below. The beach had fine sand, and the air smelled of coconut. The coastline seemed to stretch endlessly into the distance. Wait. Feng Wu's eyes widened. It was a white beach. Were they here on vacation? If there were some benches and shade on the beach, it really would be a vacation. Are we at the seaside now? Duguyamo was amazed. Feng Sang stared at Feng Wu. You said earlier that the trials would be in the sequence of the 5 elements. The first 2 were metal and wood, and now we have water. You were right. She couldn't understand how Feng Wu could guess it when they were on the first floor, and she herself only realized it now. How could Feng Wu be so much better? What are we supposed to do for this level? Feng Sun looked around curiously. But apart from a boat, there was nothing. Just then, roar! A terrifying roar made all of them jump. It was a gigantic sea dragon. The creature was hundreds of meters long, and it looked down at them with cold eyes. There was no emotion in them, and the temperature plummeted. Whoosh! A shadow came down from above and landed on the dragon. They let out a breath of relief when they saw the face, because it was a familiar one. It's the Black Robe Ghost King. They were worried that he wouldn't show up. Kiddo, you're very bold to come here. I bet that you'll lose this one. The Ghost King seemed to get along better with them by quarreling. If one were to take a closer look. At first, the Ghost King was indifferent and even hostile toward Feng Wu. Because he knew that Feng Wu was on the White Fairy's side. And he wasn't on friendly terms with the White Fairy. But after the first 2 floors, the Ghost King's impression of Feng Wu had changed, and even he didn't notice that he was appearing more and more often. Chapter 1943. Chapter 1943, Untitled. No, I'm going to win. Feng Wu was as confident as ever. Ha ha ha, I like how confident you are. Good, said the Ghost King. The trial for this floor is easy. Do you see this little guy? He pointed at the huge sea dragon that was hundreds of meters long. The little guy doesn't want to take lives on its own, but it has a great appetite. What should we do? He smiled at the others. So, you're going to feed it today. Feng Wu. Gosh. The sea dragon was hundreds of meters long. How much could it eat? Feng Wu said, to what extent? The Ghost King smiled at Feng Wu. Until it doesn't want to eat anymore. Feng Wu said, how much time do we have? The Black Robe Ghost King said, the same as the first 2 floors. Feng Wu said, it eats anything, does it? The Black Robe Ghost King rubbed his chin and chuckled. Of course not. Come to think of it, my little dragon is very picky. Aren't you? He patted the sea dragon's head. The sea dragon rubbed its head against the Ghost King in an affectionate way. Feng Wu asked, what does it like to eat? The Ghost King pointed at the sea below. It eats most seafood, but for shellfish, you need to remove the shell before feeding it. My little guy's stomach has been weak recently, and can't take anything hard. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Wu said, Shellfish has very little edible parts. The Ghost King gave her a teasing look. I trust you can do it, kiddo. Feng Wu said, It's doable, as long as you promise me something. It's doable? Feng Sun and the others all gave Feng Wu strange looks. How could it be doable? The sea dragon was hundreds of meters long. How big an appetite would it have? They still didn't know how much food they could find in the sea, but she had already agreed. The Ghost King was curious. What do you want? The water dragon ball, Feng Wu said matter-of-factly. Without it we can't catch that much seafood, and we won't be able to finish the task. If that happens, we'll die, but… Feng Wu smiled at the sea dragon. But this pregnant sea dragon will also have a very difficult time. The sea dragon stared at Feng Wu. The black-robed Ghost King narrowed his eyes as well. Feng Sun and the others stared at Feng Wu in amazement. Are you saying that the dragon is pregnant? Is it storing food for the labor? Is it going to need a lot of seafood? I heard that sea dragons can eat a lot of things and digest them slowly. That means we'll be filling a bottomless pit. Everyone's mouths fell open. Feng Wu was the only one who was still smiling. With the water dragon ball, I can promise you that I'll get the food for you. The sea dragon stared at Feng Wu. It had a water dragon ball, but that was the essence of its life. It couldn't just give it away. Feng Wu chuckled. If we fail, you'll still have the water dragon ball. Chapter 1944. Chapter 1944, Untitled. Feng Wu then turned to the black-robed Ghost King. What do you think? Before, the Ghost King wouldn't even consider the request. He wouldn't have even looked at her because he thought too little of her. After the 2 trials, his attitude toward Feng Wu had changed a little. He patted the dragon's head. Give it to her. The sea dragon stared at him in astonishment. Was its master taking sides? He no longer indulged it like he used to. Master! The sea dragon was about to speak, when the Ghost King gave it a stern look. The dragon knew very well that its master never took no for an answer. Despite its unwillingness, the sea dragon had to spit out the translucent water dragon ball, and the ball shot toward Feng Wu. Feng Wu caught it and held it in her hand. The Ghost King reminded her, Kiddo, if you can't finish the task, not only do you have to return the ball, all of you will die. Feng Wu nodded. I know. The sea dragon threw a dirty look at Feng Wu, patted its stomach, and left with the Ghost King. Feng Sun and the others ran to her side as soon as the pair left. Feng Sun sounded distressed when he said, Xiao Wu, this is an impossible task. How could you agree to it? Duguyamo chimed in, If the sea dragon wasn't pregnant, we might be able to fill its stomach if we tried, but it's pregnant. Feng Yiran said, Feng Wu, do you know how big a pregnant sea dragon's appetite is? There's a reason that they're called devouring sea beasts. Feng Sang said, Have you forgotten who you are just because we praised you a little? We can't fill the stomach of a hungry, pregnant sea dragon. It's impossible. Jun Linyun was worried as well. And it's so picky. We need to remove the shells. What are they thinking? Feng Sang said, You took the task, you finish it. I won't be a part of it. Feng Wu had been a hero a moment ago, but everyone seemed to have turned their backs on her. Feng Wu glanced at Feng Sang. I took the task, I finish it, and you won't be a part of it? Fine. Go tell the Ghost King that you want a different task. Go ahead. Feng Sang immediately recoiled. She couldn't even look up when the Ghost King showed up. Of course she didn't dare to negotiate with him. She didn't have a death wish. Feng Wu glanced at them. Do you think that the Ghost King came up with that task on the spot? She smirked. No. In fact, all the past survival teams have done these tasks before. It's like having the students take the same test every year. You're so naive if you think you can just change the questions. Who do you think you are? You don't get to pick your tasks with the Black Robe Ghost King. The crowd was speechless. Up on the clouds, the black-robed Ghost King sat on the sea dragon's back and looked very relaxed. She's good, isn't she? He smiled at the sea dragon. The dragon gritted its teeth. No, she wasn't good at all. Well, she's all right, I guess, said the dragon. The black-robed Ghost King said, she's very interesting. She's wise, whimsical, and can think about and solve problems in unique ways. And she knows how to go with the flow. She's so young, but her thinking is more comprehensive than anyone else's. Isn't she amazing? Chapter 1945, Untitled. Chapter 1945, Untitled. The sea dragon gritted its teeth. She didn't sound interesting at all. It wanted to kill everyone who tried to steal its master away. Ha! She's so interesting. The black-robed Ghost King gloated. If she really can lead the survival team to victory, well, that'll be a first. Come, let's have a look at the chosen team. After Feng Wu scolded them, Feng Sun and the others lowered their heads without saying a word. Feng Wu said, "Time is of the essence here. Let's start fishing." Feng Sang and the others didn't like the idea, but they had to admit that Feng Wu was right. "We still have some hope if we work hard, but if we don't, we'll all die," Feng Wu said decisively. They had no choice but to depend on the little hope that they had. They sailed out. The fishing boat was 100 meters long, and they looked at one another in bewilderment. Seeing the hopeless looks on their faces, Feng Wu sighed in resignation. "You guys catch as many as you can, and I'll make up the rest of it, okay?" Everyone looked at Feng Wu in disbelief. Feng Sang said, "You'll make up the rest of it? With what?" Duguyamo took Feng Wu's hand and sounded pleasantly surprised. "You know what to do, don't you? Feng Wu, you've figured it out." Feng Wu didn't speak. Duguyamo said excitedly, "Feng Sang, have you forgotten? It was the same with the first 2 floors. She was always very confident, and in fact, she was always correct. So this time..." Duguyamo smiled at Feng Wu. "I know you're the best. I believe you." Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Duguyamo said, "I have the water attribute, so I'll go in first." After that, she swiftly jumped into the water. Feng Sang looked suspiciously at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said, "Stop looking at me. Even if I have cards up my sleeves, I won't tell you." Feng Sang was amazed. "So, Duguyamo was right. You figured it out?" "If that was the case, no one would die." Feng Wu shrugged and didn't give any answer. Feng Sang said, "All right. It's like what you said. We'll do what we can, and you'll make up the rest." After that, she jumped into the water as well. Feng Sun looked at Feng Wu and hesitated. He didn't have the water attribute and naturally was intimidated by the sea. "Xiao Wu, you really?" Before Feng Sun could ask the question, Feng Wu chuckled. "I know what to do, so just trust me, okay?" "All right." Jun Linyun jumped out of nowhere and patted Feng Wu's shoulder. "No matter what you do, I'll always trust you." Feng Sun narrowed his eyes and kept his gaze on Jun Linyun. The look gave Jun Linyun the creep. Before he could ask, Feng Sun was dragging him away. "Hey! Feng Sun! What are you doing? Get over here!" Feng Sun pulled Jun Linyun to the side. Jun Linyun looked innocently at Feng Sun. Feng Sun asked, "Do you have a crush on her?" Jun Linyun nodded repeatedly. "Of course. She's my goddess and the only woman I want to marry." Feng Sun asked, "You're still thinking that way when you know about her relationship with Boss Jun?" Jun Linyun asked innocently, "Are Boss Jun and Miss Feng Wu really what you say they are? Why don't I see it?" Feng Sun asked, "Why do you say that?" Chapter 1946, Untitled. Chapter 1946, Untitled. Jun Linyun said, "Look, when we talked about it earlier, Boss Jun said that Feng Wu had disappointed him. He didn't acknowledge his relationship with her." Feng Sun was rendered speechless. Jun Linyan said, so, he denied it. That is to say, Miss Feng Wu is single now. Why can't I court her? Feng Sun clenched his fists. Boss Jun really was the one to be blamed here. He just wouldn't give up on his ego and acknowledge her. As a result, Jun Linyun had the wrong impression. That's their relationship. You're not allowed to like Xiao Wu. Why do you say that? Because she's my sister. Jun Linyun raised his eyebrows. Hey, future brother-in-law, can I tell you something? Feng Sun stared at Jun Linyun. What future brother-in-law? Shut up already. Jun Linyun lowered his voice. What if she's the only woman I'll marry for as long as I live? There will be no concubines, no maids, and no women on the side. Miss Feng Wu will be the only woman I'll ever have. Will you marry her to me? 1. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. That did sound nice. Jun Linyan said, Boss Jun is so popular and everyone likes him. Zhou Qingluan is on the other end of the world, but Ranmil is right here. He then lowered his voice. Ranmil may look like she's so pure and indifferent to Boss Jun, but from the way she behaves, she must be jealous of Feng Wu, don't you think? Feng Sun gave it some thought and nodded. Jun Linyan said, you see, wherever Boss Jun goes, trouble follows, and they're all directed at little Feng Wu. It's only just the beginning. Imagine doing it for a lifetime. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. Jun Linyan went on, but look at me. I can swear to you that Xiao Wu is the only one I'll ever marry. If I look at another woman, you can chop this off. Jun Linyan pointed at his private part. Feng Sun cleared his throat. Jun Linyan put up 3 fingers to make an oath. I'll let her take charge of everything, from the property to the household affairs. After she marries me, she'll be the boss, and I'll be her subordinate. I'll do whatever she says. Feng Sun bit his lower lip. It just sounded more and more pleasant. Jun Linyan added, if Boss Jun ever does something to upset Xiao Wu, do you think you can settle accounts for her? No, you can't. But you can with me. You've always pushed me around anyway, and if you want, you can punch me anytime. Brother Feng, you're more capable than me, and you can discipline me whenever you want. But with Boss Jun. Feng Sun stared at Jun Linyan. Jun Linyan said, so, future brother-in-law, you'll help me, right? No, I won't. Feng Sun smacked Jun Linyan on the head. Stop trying to sabotage your brother's marriage. Do you have a death wish? Rubbing his forehead, Jun Linyan mumbled, but my brother doesn't like Xiao Wu. What? Feng Sun threw a dirty look at Jun Linyan. If Boss Jun didn't like her, he would never have done so many unusual things. He just doesn't show it. Feng Sun told the truth. Feng Sun, Jun Linyan, what are you doing there? We don't have much time left. Feng Wu stared at them. Chapter 1947. Chapter 1947, Untitled. Both of them had the fire attribute and couldn't go into the sea, so Feng Wu prepared 3 fishing rods for them. That included Xian Yi. I'm coming. Feng Sun ran over happily and saw the 3 rods. Wait, are those fishing rods? Feng Wu said, yes. Since you can't go in, you might as well fish from up here. Ahem. Feng Sun rubbed his chin and cleared his throat. Feng Wu asked, what's with that look on your face? Jun Linyan said, haha, Brother Feng has had issues with water since he was little. Anything aquatic will avoid him. He's never been able to catch anything with a fishing rod. You got him this for nothing. Feng Sun stared at him. As if you can catch anything. Xian Yi said, shut up. Feng Wu asked, are the 3 of you all that bad? Feng Sun and Xian Yi cleared their throats while Jun Linyan gloated. I'm an expert at fishing. I'm great at it, ho-ho. Feng Wu handed him a fishing rod. Get over there and start fishing then. Jun Linyun looked at Feng Wu affectionately. My goddess, if I catch a lot of fish, will you be nicer to me? Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Jun Linyun said, all right, I'll stop talking. I'll get on with my work. As soon as he walked away, Feng Sun frowned. That boy and his tongue. Feng Wu nodded. You don't say. Feng Sun glanced at Feng Wu as he played with the fishing rod. Feng Wu asked, what? Feng Sun bit his lower lip and hesitated. Feng Wu said, if you have something to say, say it. Plus, if we lose on this floor, you'll never have a chance to say it. That made sense. Feng Sun said, I'll ask then. Feng Wu attached bait to the fishing rod, tossed the fishing line into the water, and said, ask away. Feng Sun said, tell me the truth then. Are you fond of Boss Jun or not? Feng Wu's hand jolted, and she nearly dropped the fishing rod. She turned around and gave Feng Sun a strange look. Feng Sun said, what's that look on your face? I'll change the question. Between Boss Jun and Jun Linyun, who would you choose? Feng Wu went on staring at him and found the question ridiculous. Feng Sun wiped his face. That's right. How can I ask such a question? Boss Jun is obviously so much better, and Jun Linyun is nothing in comparison. Of course you won't choose him. In fact, Feng Sun liked what Jun Linyun had said earlier. Feng Wu said, why do you think I'll choose Jun Linyuan? Feng Sun said, what? Are you choosing Jun Linyun? Feng Wu was speechless. Why do I have to choose from that family? Feng Sun said, what do you mean? Feng Wu said, can't I like someone else? I'm not bound to the Jun family. Feng Sun jumped to his feet. Xiao Wu, are you in love with someone else? Have you changed your mind? Boss Jun likes you so much. Feng Wu said, what are you talking about? Since when does Jun Linyuan like me? If he really likes me, he would have acknowledged our marriage engagement, and the others wouldn't have laughed at me. Feng Sun said, that's because of his personality. Feng Wu said, I don't care if he likes me or not. It doesn't matter now, because I've just realized that I'm fond of someone else. Chapter 1948. Chapter 1948, Untitled. What? Feng Sun jumped up and stared at Feng Wu. What did you just say? Feng Wu grinned at Feng Sun, leapt over the rail, and jumped into the sea. She didn't even cause a splash. Feng Sun was anxious. By the looks of it, the one she was fond of wasn't Boss Jun. But if not him, who? Yu Minji? No, it couldn't be him. But who else? Can it be Jun Linyun? Feng Sun paled. Hearing this, Jun Linyun ran happily to Feng Sun and asked in bewilderment, what happened? Feng Sun looked Jun Linyun up and down, then shook his head. This guy was too silly compared with Boss Jun. Why would Feng Wu choose him over Boss Jun? That was just stupid. But Feng Sun couldn't figure it out no matter what. By then, Feng Wu had reached the bottom of the ocean. In this little world under the sea, the resources were similar to those in her old world, but not exactly the same. In her old world, the sea was full of fish. After that, there were other sea creatures such as shrimps, crabs, and other shellfish. But it wasn't like that here. Feng Wu didn't see any fish here, but there were a lot of crabs and shellfish. However, Feng Wu smiled bitterly. It seemed that Jun Linyun wouldn't catch any fish after all. What a pity. Just then, Feng Sang and Duguyamo came back up together with Feng Wu. Feng Wu didn't want to, but the other two insisted. Feng Wu, I know you're smart. Duguyamo had to recognize Feng Wu's capability now. Tell me, how many kilograms of food do we have to feed that sea dragon to fill its stomach? Feng Sang looked at her as well. Feng Wu had done the calculations, and she answered as soon as Duguyamo asked. If it's not pregnant, 50,000 kilograms would do, but it's storing food for its pregnancy now, so 250,000 kilograms. 250,000 kilograms. When the others all came back to the boat and heard the news, they almost slipped back into the water. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu. Do we need that much? Feng Wu nodded. That's only the minimum. Feng Sun said, if that's the case, let's get some fish then. If we can catch something as big as a shark, it won't be so hard. I remember that you can lure a shark with blood, so let's use mine. Feng Sun rolled up his sleeve and exposed his strong arm. Feng Sang and Duguyamo both gave Feng Sun strange looks. Feng Sun said, I mean it. I grew up eating all kinds of tonic, and I have yummy blood. It'll draw the shark here. Just wait and see. Feng Sun was about to cut his own wrist when Feng Wu stopped him. Feng Wu shook her head. Forget it. It won't work. Feng Sun said, why won't it work? My blood. There's no shark. Duguyamo couldn't take it anymore. She looked from Feng Sun to the sea and said angrily, there's no fish in the sea. Feng Sun chuckled. Are you kidding me? What kind of sea doesn't have fish? Chapter 1949. Chapter 1949, Untitled. Feng Sang was about to speak when Feng Wu shook her head. She then said to Feng Sun in a serious tone, it's true. There's no fish in this sea. Feng Sun was rendered speechless. Xian Yi was speechless. So was Jun Linyun. Feng Sun said, so. There's nothing large either, only shrimps, crabs, and shellfish. Feng Wu heaved a sigh. They're neither too small nor too big, but do you remember what the Ghost King said? All eyes were on Feng Wu. She said, I now see what he meant when he said that the sea dragon only ate shellfish without the shell. The shell is heavy, and without it, the flesh inside only weighs so little. 250,000 kilograms? Duguyamo looked like she was about to cry. How are we ever going to make up that amount? She counted with her fingers. We can hold our breaths longer than normal people, but not indefinitely. We can go without breathing for 3 minutes at most, but how many things can we catch in that time? Duguyamo removed a sack from her back and poured out the crabs and shellfish inside. It was true. There was no fish at all. Everyone fell silent when they saw this. Duguyamo shook her head at Feng Wu. It's an impossible task. We can't do it. Feng Sang was almost crying. If there's hope, we'll do our best, but the problem is, how are we going to find 250,000 kilograms of shellfish flesh in 15 minutes? Feng Yiran looked up at the sky. We worked so hard to come from the first floor to the third one. The Ghost King is doing this on purpose. How are we going to find so much food? They had to take a breath every 3 minutes. How much food could they fit into those sacks in 15 minutes? Jun Linyun scratched his head. There has to be a way, right? Feng Yiran said, no, there isn't. Your Royal Highness, we have no hope left. Do you have any suggestions? Jun Linyun didn't know what to say, because he couldn't think of anything. Feng Sun said, too bad that we aren't of the water attribute. If we can go in with you guys, it'll be a lot faster. Feng Wu smiled and opened her right hand. Have you forgotten about this? Everyone looked at her hand. A pearl the size of a pigeon's egg lay there, and it was glowing brightly. The water dragon ball! Jun Linyun cried out. Feng Wu nodded. This is what I borrowed from the sea dragon. Let's see what it can do. Feng Wu injected her spiritual essence into the water dragon ball. Immediately, it shone even brighter. Feng Wu yelled, part the sea for me. With that, the water dragon ball created a gust of wind, which was aimed at the sea surface. The wind was like a sharp blade, which split the sea open. Part! Feng Wu bellowed. With that, the wind sank into the sea and pushed the seawater to either side. Thump! Chapter 1950, Untitled. Chapter 1950, Untitled. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. The sea really parted. Oh my God! Everyone watched this in astonishment. Duguyamo covered her mouth with her hands and couldn't believe what she was seeing. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. Soon, there was a 10-meter gap, as if invisible walls were keeping the two sides apart. In the space between the two sides, countless shrimps, crabs, and shellfish lay at the bottom of the sea. Feng Wu said, "The water dragon ball won't keep the water apart forever. Let's start gathering food." "Wow!" Feng Sun cried out with wide-open eyes. The water dragon ball almost seemed to be tailor-made for the three of them who couldn't swim. Did Feng Wu plan this when she borrowed the water dragon ball from the sea dragon? That was so incredible. You and Boss June are so similar. Both of you can think 5, 6, or 7 steps ahead of you. Feng Sun patted Feng Wu's shoulder. The next second, he jumped into the sea which had opened up. How amazing! The water dragon ball could open up the sea without leaving a drop of water behind. Seeing this, Xian Yi jumped in after Feng Sun. Jun Linyun looked at Feng Wu with shiny eyes and clenched his fists in excitement. "My goddess, you're so amazing. I promise that I'll never give up on you." "I would prefer that you do." Before Feng Wu could say that, Jun Linyun had jumped into the sea. Duguyamo looked at Feng Wu and wanted to say something to thank her, but she had been Feng Wu's enemy for so long that she couldn't bring herself to say such things. At that thought, Duguyamo put on a stern face and jumped in without giving Feng Wu another look. Feng Sang felt the same way as Duguyamo, and so did Feng Yiran. Hence, the three of them jumped into the sea one after another, leaving Feng Wu behind on the boat alone. Feng Wu rubbed her nose. At the bottom of the sea, everyone was busy working. But someone indeed needed to stay behind to give the others a hand. For instance, Feng Sun was in trouble now. There were so many shrimps, crabs, and shellfish at the bottom of the sea, and all they needed to do was stuff them into their sack. Whoosh! They moved so fast that it was impossible to follow the movements of their hands. But now they ran into some trouble. Feng Sun was the first to realize it. He looked behind and saw over a dozen sacks, but how were they going to get them back to the boat? The bottom of the sea was 500 m below the boat. It's not that easy to fly up there. Without the water, how are we going to get up there? Feng Sun scratched his head. Jun Linyun said, "There's seawater on both sides of us, isn't there? We can swim up." Feng Sun rolled his eyes at Jun Linyun. "Use your head. The sea has been parted, which means that there are invisible walls on both sides. We won't be able to get through." Jun Linyun realized that as well. Feng Sun smacked his head. "I remember I saw some rope on the deck." The others all looked at him. Chapter 1951 Untitled. Chapter 1951 Untitled. Feng Sun said excitedly, "Xiao Wu is still up there, isn't she? If she's smart enough, she'll lower the rope down now. We can then tie the sacks onto it and she can pull them up. She can then empty the sacks onto the deck, before throwing the sacks back down." The more Feng Sun spoke, the more excited he got and he clenched his fist. "Yes, that's how we can do it if Feng Wu is smart enough." The others gave it some thought. That's right. If Feng Wu is smart enough, she should have realized that by now and lowered the rope. But what if she isn't that smart? Feng Sun said, "That's okay. I can go back up first then." Just then, Jun Linyun pointed above them and cried out, "Arg! Look!" They all followed his finger. Then they saw. Crack! Something rumbled overhead, and a giant shadow blocked their vision. The air seemed to warp. Everything trembled. It felt as if someone was sailing a giant ship in their direction. As a matter of fact, oh God! It's Feng Wu. She's coming down together with the boat. Duguyamo looked at the sky in disbelief. Feng Wu actually. That was such a reckless move. Thump! The boat landed with a loud thump. The seabed shook violently, and the impact created a large pit. Luckily, Feng Sun and the others ran quickly enough. Otherwise, they would have been buried. There was dust everywhere. Xiao Wu. Feng Sun reacted first. He quickly rushed over to her side and asked, Xiao Wu, are you alright? Cough. Feng Wu emerged from the dust and waved at him. I'm fine. My stomach is churning a little, but it'll go away. Feng Sun asked in astonishment, Why are you here? Feng Wu said, I was worried that you wouldn't be able to get all the seafood back onto the boat, so I came down with the boat. Duguyamo stomped her foot. Feng Wu, you've made a terrible mistake. Feng Wu was confused. Why? Duguyamo said, I know you're trying to help by bringing the boat down, but how are we going to get it back up there? Everyone was looking at Feng Wu. That was right. Once they loaded the seafood onto the boat, how were they going to get it back up? This is impossible. Feng Sun said anxiously. Xiao Wu, how could you do such a silly thing? We figured it out already. You only need to lower a rope. We'll then tie the sacks onto it and you can pull them back up. The others nodded in agreement. Right now they were all on the same side. But Feng Wu only gave them a strange look. She pursed her lips and said impatiently, Don't you know the saying? What? Feng Wu said, When water rises, the boat rises with it. Everyone stared at Feng Wu. Their heads buzzed, as if they had just been struck by lightning. When water rises, the boat rises with it. Ah! Feng Sun was the first to realize it. Burying his head in his hands, he yelled, How can I be so stupid? I'm such an idiot. Chapter 1952 You Lost 1. Chapter 1952 You Lost 1. The others realized it as well, especially Duguyamo, who had been the first to ask the question. She smacked her own head. Gosh! I'm so stupid! Why did I ask such a silly question? The others figured it out as well, and they all started questioning their own intelligence. Ahem! Seeing that they all looked bewildered, Feng Wu cleared her throat and prompted them. What are you waiting for? Do you have a lot of time on your hands? That was right. They all seemed to wake up. Time was of the essence here, and they couldn't afford to waste a minute. Quickly! Feng Sun waved his hand. Everyone! Get to work! Luckily, Feng Wu had brought the boat down, so they didn't have to worry about carrying the bags. Feng Wu smacked her head. Picking up the seafood would be quick, but the sea dragon only wanted the flesh, not the shells. Hence, with a wave of her hand, Little Phoenix flew out of the ring space. Apart from Little Phoenix, there was also Feng Tutu, the adorable tiger cub. Feng Wu gave them instructions. Remove the shells. Before Feng Tutu could say anything, Little Phoenix protested first. It glared at Feng Wu. Why should we do it? Now that it had retrieved part of its memory, it remembered its previous life as Master Phoenix. Why should it do hard labor? It was humiliating. Feng Tutu understood what was going on. It didn't mind doing hard labor. As soon as it heard Feng Wu's order, it ran happily to her side and sat down. With its paws, it picked up a shellfish and crushed the shell, leaving only the flesh behind. It glanced at Feng Wu and asked with its big, bright eyes, was it doing the right thing? The cub was so adorable that Feng Wu felt her heart melt when it looked at her. Yes. Feng Wu rubbed the cub's fluffy head. That's right. Tutu, you're the best. Ah, the cub flushed at the compliment, and its shiny eyes could melt one's heart. Little Phoenix snorted and stomped its foot. It then raised its chin proudly. It was mad. That cub. Feng Wu rubbed Little Phoenix's head as well, which destroyed its arrogant image. She then smacked the bird's head. Get to work. Everything else can wait. She walked away after that. Little Phoenix was speechless. She wouldn't even comfort it. Humph. Seeing the current situation, Little Phoenix knew very well that their most important task was to remove the shells. Luckily, with its sharp claws, little Phoenix could remove the shell in one move. The two spiritual pets worked together, one crushing and one prying. The shells were quickly removed. Duguyamo, who was also busy with her work, suddenly smacked her own head. Gosh! The others all looked at her. That sudden outburst was quite scary. Chapter 1953 You Lost, 2. Chapter 1953 You Lost, 2. Let's start removing the shells. Duguyamo cried out. Have you forgotten what the Black Robe Ghost King said? The sea dragon only wants the flesh. That reminded the others. Picking up the seafood was fast. All they needed to do was stuff them into the sack. But the problem was, the shells had to be removed. I'll do it, Duguyamo said. I'll go with you. Feng Sang followed her. But they couldn't believe what they saw on the deck. Where did the two spiritual pets come from? Duguyamo couldn't believe her eyes. They saw little Phoenix and the tiger cub. Both were fierce spiritual pets, but they were very obedient now. Both were devoted to their work without even looking up. Whom do they belong to? Duguyamo was amazed. They look very capable, at least much better than either of us. They're both obedient and powerful. You can play with them and use them in battle as well. How wonderful! Do you know who their owner is? Do they belong to the seventh prince? Duguyamo asked enviously. But Feng Sang immediately turned to leave. Hey Feng Sang, where are you going? Answer my question. Duguyamo ran after Feng Sang. Feng Sang threw her a dirty look without saying another word. Duguyamo's eyes lit up. Do you know who their owner is? Feng Sang said, Stop it. Duguyamo asked, Why not? They are very impressive. That cub is an adorable thing, but if you look closely, you'll see that it's a spiritual elder. And there's the little phoenix. If it can pass the trial of fire, it'll become a real phoenix. The two animals aren't naturally compatible, but now they're working together. Other people will be so astonished. Who? Feng Sang said, Feng Wu. Duguyamo looked around. Feng Wu isn't here. Feng Sang took a deep breath and found Duguyamo's remark idiotic. I mean that they belong to Feng Wu. Duguyamo was astonished. Feng Sang felt the satisfaction of revenge, and she smirked. Yes, you heard me. The person you've been admiring is Feng Wu. Duguyamo was speechless. Feng Sang gave her another glance before storming off. Duguyamo bit her lower lip, and she was overwhelmed with complicated feelings. Feng Wu. That lucky person is Feng Wu. Duguyamo murmured to herself. Suddenly, Duguyamo's stomach lurched, because she realized something. Before, if she heard what Feng Sang had just said, she would be so jealous and angry that she would be grinding her teeth. But now, she didn't feel that way anymore. What did it mean? Could mean one of two things. The first possibility was that she had become Feng Wu's friend, so she had stopped envying her. Duguyamo shook her head. Although she wasn't against Feng Wu now, they weren't friends. And the second possibility was, the difference between them was simply too huge that she could no longer see Feng Wu as a competitor. Therefore, she had stopped envying her. Chapter 1954. Chapter 1954, Untitled. That conclusion was quite hurtful. Duguyamo's first reaction was to deny it. However, deep down, she knew that the second possibility was the truth. No. Duguyamo held her head in distress. She could admit that on the first two floors, Feng Wu had saved everyone by discovering some unique method, but to admit that she wasn't even close to Feng Wu's level was too painful a reality to accept. Duguyamo fell into pained silence. 15 minutes passed very fast, especially since it was a countdown. 3 minutes left. Feng Sun was filled with despair when he saw what they had gathered so far. Yes, they had found a lot of seafood, but it was nowhere near 250,000 kilograms. What should they do? 2 more minutes left. 1 minute. 30 seconds. The countdown went on. Everyone looked more and more desperate, and they all looked defeated. Just then, ha ha ha! They hear a gloating guffaw which only worsened their mood. It was none other than the Ghost King, who had given them this impossible task. Ha ha ha, my little friend, have you finished? The Ghost King's giant face reappeared in the sky. He was laughing so hard that his whole face twitched. We're doomed, Feng Sun thought to himself. Well, that was smart. I see that you've pushed the seawater aside. The Ghost King grinned when he saw the space. So, have you finished the task? Everyone fell silent. The Ghost King descended with a whoosh, riding the pregnant sea dragon. He glanced at the food and asked the sea dragon, "Is that enough?" The sea dragon frowned and shook its head. No! No! The Ghost King pondered. The sea dragon said matter-of-factly, "There's 50,000 kilograms of meat here. In a normal situation, it would be enough to fill my stomach. But things are different now. I'm pregnant, so this is only 20% of what I need." The Ghost King looked down at Feng Wu. "Kid, did you hear that? That's not enough." Feng Wu bit her lower lip. Immediately, everyone became very quiet. Drip, drip. Time ticked by, and the 15 minutes were soon over. Everyone was panic-stricken. Was that heart going to explode? What would happen? Were they going to die? They were still fidgeting, when the Ghost King grabbed the heart at the last second. It didn't explode. Feng Sun and the others looked nervously at the Ghost King and kept trembling. That was because, if the Ghost King released the heart, they would all die. "Kid, you didn't finish the task on the 3rd floor. Do you admit it?" the Ghost King asked in a righteous tone. He had complicated feelings as well. He wanted Feng Wu to win and lose at the same time. He wanted her to win because he was moved by what she had said. If the survival team could turn the situation around and win the competition in the end, it would be a great story. And he wanted her to lose because... Chapter 1955, Survival. Chapter 1955, Survival. He wanted her to lose because the girl was too confident, and too much confidence was arrogance. The Ghost King wouldn't accept the possibility that the girl could defeat him. Therefore, the Ghost King gloated at Feng Wu and wanted to know what she would do next. Feng Sun and the others were very anxious. What should they do now? Their hearts were thumping. They needed 250,000 kilograms, but they only had 50,000 kilograms here. That was only 20% of what they needed. Duguyamo and Feng Sang looked at each other, and both were filled with despair. "Ha ha ha, so you admit that you've lost, right?" the Ghost King stared at them. No one answered. The Ghost King laughed and gave Feng Wu a pitying look. "Well," he said, "you bit off more than you can chew. This is it. You've lost, so you're all going to die." He almost bellowed the second half of his words. Feng Wu cried out when he was about to crush the heart. "Wait!" Immediately, all eyes were on her. The Ghost King frowned at Feng Wu as well. Feng Wu smiled calmly. "We've lost? Says who?" Everyone's faces lit up. That was. The Ghost King stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Before he could ask, Feng Wu asked, "Why did you say we lost?" "Ha ha ha, kid, it's too late for that now." The Ghost King smirked, thinking that Feng Wu was only trying to buy more time. Feng Wu stared at the sea dragon and asked, "All you need is 250,000 kilograms of food. Is that correct?" The sea dragon looked back at Feng Wu and said affirmatively, 250,000 kilograms, not 1 gram less. Feng Wu smiled. "And seafood will do, right?" The sea dragon smirked. "That's right. Anything will do, but you don't have any fish here." Everyone was frustrated by the fact that there was no fish in this sea. Feng Wu asked casually, "So, fish will do as well?" The sea dragon stared at her and sneered. "Of course, if you can find any." The others had lost all hope. Where was she supposed to find any fish? She was only human. Just then, Feng Wu chuckled. "All right." What did she mean by that? Could she make fish appear out of nowhere? They all looked at Feng Wu in resignation. Disappointed, the Ghost King was about to destroy the heart. Whoosh! They heard something overhead. Things began to fall from above. Thump, thump. It was like a heavy shower. But it was a shower of fish. Everyone was dumbfounded by the falling fish. They watched what was happening in astonishment and disbelief. Then, they looked from the fish to Feng Wu. Feng Sun was rendered speechless. Duguyama was speechless. Feng Sang didn't know what to say. Nor did the sea dragon. Even the Ghost King, who had seen enough strange things, was staring at Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled at him. "Will these fish do?" Chapter 1956, Untitled. Chapter 1956, Untitled. Fish. Where did the fish come from? Everyone stared at Feng Wu in astonishment for a very long time. Where did these fish come from? Did she conjure them? How did she do it? Even the arrogant Ghost King was shocked, let alone the others. "How did you do it?" He stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said, "What? Is it that hard to do?" Was it hard? The others almost cried when they heard the question. It wasn't just difficult. It was impossible. Seeing how excited they were, Feng Wu said, "Do you mean these moonfish?" Feng Wu waved the ring on her finger and told Feng Sun, "You helped me catch them. Have you forgotten?" "What? I see." Feng Sun smacked his head. He finally recalled. It was true. Back on their way to the senile grassland, Feng Wu had found a place to take a bath. "Gosh! I'm so stupid!" Feng Sun smacked his head again. He genuinely found himself too stupid. How could he have forgotten all of it? That was why Feng Wu had been very confident from the very beginning. She had had a card up her sleeves. "Xiao Wu, you're so awesome. You planned 1,000 steps ahead." Feng Sun shook with excitement. "You knew you should catch some moonfish on your way to the grassland. How did you plan so far ahead?" Feng Sun admired her so much. He found Feng Wu very smart, so smart that she was becoming a second June Linyuan. Feng Wu waved at him. "I didn't plan that far ahead. Back then, I thought that the moonfish were so nutritious and that the senile grassland was so far away from water that fish had to be rare here. So I caught some, thinking that I could sell them on the grassland." She then shrugged. "And things just kept coming up after we got here. I was so busy that I forgot completely about it. If it wasn't for the sea dragon, I would have forgotten them completely." However, the explanation only seemed to emphasize how lucky she was. She caught some random fish, and she solved a crisis later on with them. What kind of luck was that? Feng Sun was silent. So was Duguyamo. And everyone else, because they didn't know what to say. Feng Wu smiled at the sea dragon. "What do you think? These fish are very famous, aren't they?" Jun Linyuan himself had complimented how good these moonfish were. Smelling the spiritual essence rising from the deck, the sea dragon knew that the moonfish was worth its fame. That was such a pleasant surprise. But it had to ask for its master's permission first. So it turned around and gave the Ghost King a longing look. If it could eat these moonfish, its future baby would be so amazing. But the Ghost King was so difficult to predict, and no one knew what he was thinking. And no one knew what his answer would be. Chapter 1957. Chapter 1957, Untitled. Feng Sun and the others had realized what was going on and were all delighted. Ah! They could finally survive the third floor. That was great. Immediately, they all ran toward Feng Wu. They raised Feng Wu and tossed her up. Xiao Wu, you're great. You're so awesome. How can you be so smart? Xiao Wu, why are you so lucky? Even Duguyamo and Feng Sang were greatly excited, let alone Feng Sun, Xian Yi, and Jun Linyun. They seemed to have forgotten their feud with Feng Wu. Everyone was jumping and celebrating. The Ghost King felt equally conflicted. He didn't expect the girl to be able to turn things around again. But he would feel so humiliated if he let her go just like that. Since she was so smart, he would play some more games with her. At that thought, the Ghost King smiled at Feng Wu and spoke indifferently. Although the moonfish are full of nutrition, if I remember correctly, they're not sea fish. The excited crowd immediately fell silent. A terrible silence fell upon them. They all stared at the Ghost King in bewilderment. What did that mean? The Ghost King smiled at Feng Wu. They're from a river, aren't they? Feng Wu said, Are river fish not acceptable? The Ghost King turned her down with a smile. I'm afraid not. Everyone paled when they heard those words. If river fish didn't count, these moonfish wouldn't be counted as seafood. Then they wouldn't have enough food here. The sea dragon gave the Ghost King an anxious glance. It wanted these moonfish, which were much more precious than any seafood. But the Ghost King didn't even look at the dragon. He only smiled eerily at Feng Wu. He wanted to see what this arrogant and stubborn girl could do. Feng Wu smiled. Are you sure? The Ghost King said, Yes, I am. Feng Wu said, Is there no way around it? The Ghost King grinned. No, there isn't. Feng Wu said, Then tell me this. What are sea fish? The Ghost King gloated. Why do you even ask? Sea fish are those that swim in the sea. The next second, thud! With a flip of Feng Wu's sleeve, the moonfish that was scattered around the deck were all thrown into the sea nearby. Feng Wu was so fast that no one saw it coming. They were all shocked. When they realized what had happened, Duguyamo shrieked, Feng Wu, what are you doing? Feng Sun cried out as well. Xiao Wu. The Ghost King stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. He frowned and believed that Feng Wu must have her own reason. But no one on Feng Sang's team knew it. Feng Sang cried out, Feng Wu, have you lost your mind? How could you do that? You're insane. But Feng Wu didn't say anything. She only flipped her sleeve again. Thump. The moonfish were scooped out of the sea and thrown onto the deck again. Now they're sea fish, she smiled at the Ghost King. They've swum in the sea. The Ghost King was speechless. The rest of the crowd was equally silent. Feng Wu crossed her hands behind her back and smiled at the Ghost King. Is everything fine now? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.